So before we begin, I would like to invite our director, Meenakshi Bhatt, to introduce the speaker for the day. Ma'am, please come on the stage.
Thank you, Surya. Good morning, everybody. We didn't need to advertise this lecture at all. It just attracted everybody as soon as we said that you were going to speak, ma'am. So the whole purpose of having an inspirational lecture series was that it was conceived to invite a leader from any area of specialization who has achieved singular success and renown in their profession to speak about their life journey, their struggles, their breakthroughs, their ups, their downs, and most importantly, we have so many students in the biotech cluster here in the 3 institutes that we thought that it would be very important for our students, scientists, doctors, trainees, and the budding entrepreneurs who need to know how to hang in there and make things happen, and more importantly, how not to give up. So with that in mind, we started this series, and to inaugurate the first lecture, we've had Dr. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, who's agreed very graciously to come and give this. I'd like to say a few things. You know, if I started saying all the things that she's achieved, it would be beyond this lecture and the whole morning too. So I just wanted to say for the young students here that she founded Biocon in the 1970s when she was just 25 years old. And over a period of time, she's become a household name as a hugely successful and very innovative bio-entrepreneur. And most people, once they reach success at this level, they would have, enjoyed the laurels of their success. She didn't do this. She went on. She believed in an idea that was larger than itself when it succeeded, and all this at a time when gender parity was a real challenge in the biotech industry. Her focus then shifted to biopharmaceuticals in the development of therapeutics for diabetes mellitus. I think you produced Asia's largest quantity of insulin, lipid disorders, autoimmune disorders, and many types of cancers, including newer therapies, the cell-based and immunotherapies for relapsing leukemias and cutting-edge immunotherapies. She's the founder director of Immunil, based in Bangalore, which also partners with the celebrated physician-scientist Siddharth Mukherjee. Many of you will remember that he came and gave a talk about the CAR T-cell therapy here in our auditorium not so long ago. Kiran Mazumdar's contributions to pioneering work in biotechnology and affordable biopharmaceuticals have been widely recognized in the numerous awards bestowed on her. To name just a few, the Karnataka Rajyotsava Award, the Padma Shri, and the Padma Bhushan in India, the highest civilian awards of other countries, including the Order of Australia, the Knight of the National Order of the French Legion of Honor, which is the highest French civilian award, and the Othma Gold Medal from the US-based Chemical Heritage Foundation. She's been awarded honorary doctorates by a number of universities all over the world, including her alma mater, the Ballarat University in Australia. Regularly listed among the most influential and powerful women globally by the Times Magazine, the Financial Times, and by the Forbes ranking, has almost become a habit now over the years. She was named the EY World Entrepreneur of the Year in 2020, and we're so proud of all the achievements that she's brought, not only to her name, but also to Bangalore. Wherever you look around in Bangalore, her varied contributions in the field of science, art, and philanthropy are evident. The 1,400-bedded Mazumdar-Shaw Cancer Care Center at Narayan Health City provides a range of specialized cancer treatments and other specialty treatments. The Biocon Foundation, which was started 20 years ago, supports education and healthcare of some of the most deprived segments of society. When I was working 20 years ago in Narayan Health I once came across a patient that was a difficult to treat genetic disorder. His mother was single, and she worked as a temporary cleaner in Biocon. When they came for the second visit, they came accompanied by somebody from the Biocon Foundation, and all treatment costs were taken care of for that family. I really had hope then for where we are headed off, and I hope you'll speak about some of those themes. Anybody who's been invited to her home or office is likely to be spellbound by her huge collection of art, beautifully framed and displayed. Several Indian artists have been encouraged and supported by her, including Yusuf Arakal. Many of you must have come across the Applied DNA sculpture, which is at the Anil Kumble Circle, done by him, as well as other artworks which happen to be in the Biocon office and in the Mazumdar-Shaw Cancer Center. Her contributions helped set up the Science Gallery in Bangalore, which is currently hosting the Sky 560 exhibition, and it would be good if you could go to that. She has advised and supported the state government as an expert in many capacities, most recently on the Brand Bangalore Task Force. She's the founder member of the Biotech Vision Group of the state, as was our founding director, Professor Sharat Chandra. Their collective and futuristic vision in the year 2000 enabled the setup of the Center for Human Genetics, the Institute of Bioinformatics and Applied Biotechnology, and the Bangalore Bioinnovation Center. We have Dr. Jagdish Mithur also here, who's been part of that journey. Kiran Mazumdar has been a member of many governing boards of many institutes. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology, IIT Hyderabad, National Institute of Immunology, IIM Bangalore, just to name a few. We are proud that she is an active governing board member of our two institutes, CHG as well as IBAB. And there is an annual KMS lecture which is hosted at IBAB every year, to which eminent scientists from all over the world are invited. On a personal front, I'm proud to be awarded the Mazumdar-Shaw Research Chair at CHG. Finally, as one of the wealthiest persons anywhere, she has signed the Giving Pledge, committing much of her wealth to philanthropic causes. And with this brief overview, I'm sure that all of you will agree that Kiran Mazumdar epitomizes the spirit of this inspirational lecture. We welcome you wholeheartedly to speak on this occasion.
All of you to keep the mobile phones in silent mode. Thank you.
Thank you, Meenakshi, for that very warm and generous introduction. Over-generous, I would say. Professor Sharat Chandra, distinguished guests, and wonderful students who I see ahead of me. I'm actually very, very privileged to be kicking off this inspirational lecture series, because I think today our country needs to be inspired in pursuing scientific disciplines. I think we have such a huge potential in driving science, advancing science, and innovating in science that it's very, very important that we continuously put a focus on science and technology. And I feel very, very pleased that we live in a city like Bengaluru. We have a state government that's very, very supportive of science and technology. And I think with all these attributes, I think we can look forward to a very, very exciting future. I think biology is the new scientific frontier. It always has been, but its recognition has only drawn attention in recent times. I think the whole focus on gene editing, on genomics to begin with, and of course computational biology and quantum biology and the marrying of technologies, I think, has put a lot of focus on biology today. Because as we know, biology is the most complex of all sciences, because it encompasses every bit of science in the way biology functions and performs. And I think that's what makes it very exciting for all of us to belong to this ecosystem of biosciences. I remember when we conceptualized at the Vision Group, and Professor Sharat Chandra will remember that, in fact Jagdish might also remember that, we actually focused on, at the Vision Group, which I think was a very, very far-reaching idea of the government of Karnataka, in constituting a group of people who would actually conceptualize and implement policies that were very important to the advancement of biosciences, biotech. And way back, you know, in the year 2000, when we started the Vision Group, I remember we all focused on creating academic centers of excellence. I think that was a very important objective of the Vision Group. And as a part of that, of course, we conceptualized IBAB and CHG, and of course later the BBC. But I think it was very important that we commend ourselves for recognizing the importance of marrying digital technologies, information technology, and biological sciences. This was an idea ahead of its time. And today, I'm very happy that that concept has translated into, two centers of excellence in the country. And I was just talking to Dr. Sundar just now, who said that IBAB is such a unique offering for academic pursuit, which combines computational and biological sciences. And he said, there's no other institute in the country that actually does it at this level. And I'm really pleased, because we do have other institutes who could have done it, but we seem to have focused and done a great job of it. So today's lecture, I thought, since it's at the Center for Human Genetics, had to be about genetically acquired diseases. And I think there is a challenge, but to me the most exciting is the opportunity that we have for research and innovation. So, rather than giving you a very basic lecture on what genetic disorders are, we all know that genetic disorders are amongst the most complex and challenging conditions that we face in modern medicine. I think these disorders that arise due to abnormalities in a person's genetic material, which is the very blueprint that dictates how our bodies develop and function, is a very, very important area to focus on. And as you know, there are many, many types of genetic disorders, each rooted in different forms of genetic abnormalities. And for a country as large as India, I think all of you realize that and recognize the fact that we have a huge diversity of genetic disorders and some concentration of genetic disorders, which is what makes it very interesting to research and to find solutions for. As we know, in some cases, a mutation or a change on a single gene can be enough to cause a serious disease or condition. And these single gene disorders, such as cystic fibrosis or sickle cell anemia, are often easy to identify, from diagnostics, but very difficult to treat. In other instances, of course, the genetic material might not undergo a specific mutation, but instead involve a variation in the number of gene copies, either more or fewer than the typical amount. And when a person has an atypical number of chromosomes, or when sections of chromosomes are missing, duplicated or rearranged, it can of course lead to very serious genetic disorders. For example, a person suffering from Down syndrome is born with an extra chromosome, which, as we all know, affects brain and body development. But let me now turn to liposomal storage disorders and enzyme replacement therapies, because this is one very, very important focus area for CHG. And I know I've been talking to Dr. Meenakshi Bhatt for many, many years about how do we address this very, very challenging, difficult disease which is prevalent in so many young people. As you know, liposomal storage diseases encompasses about 50 genetic disorders, which include Pompe's disease, Fabry's disease, Gaucher's disease, just to name a few. And as we know, this has in the past led to premature death because we just didn't know how to deal with it. Gaucher's disease is the most common liposomal storage disease, and it is inherited. It is an inherited metabolic storage disorder characterized by mutations in the gene GBA1 encoding for an enzyme which is often called seridase. These mutations result in protein misfolding and subsequent premature degradation of this key enzyme, which is so critical for breaking down certain fatty substances in the body. And as the body doesn't produce enough of this enzyme, there is a buildup of glucocerebrosidase in the patient's organs and even in blood, leading to enlargement of the liver and spleen. It's very interesting that, before we had enzyme replacement therapies, young children who used to be afflicted with this terrible genetic disorder were only treated in terms of their symptoms. They would remove the spleen. They would try and give bone marrow transplants, and nothing would help because these young children would die prematurely. So it was in 1983 when a 3-year-old Brian Berman was diagnosed with Gaucher's disease that suddenly there was a focus on treatments to basically treat such a disease. And the whole concept of enzyme replacement therapies came about at that time when Dr. Roscoe Brady was doing some groundbreaking research in this particular disease area and conceptualized that, if the disease was due to a missing enzyme, then substituting that enzyme or replacing that enzyme in the body would actually help to solve this problem. And young Brian was very fortunate that such research was being conducted at the time. And in 1991, he was one amongst 8 participants in the trial, and he received 7 consecutive weekly doses of this missing enzyme, seridase. And of course, he had a miraculous recovery. Today, like many others with Gaucher's disease, he leads a near normal life, just experiencing some joint pain and slightly weakened immunity. But, ERT has really saved his life and made him lead a near normal life. And after that, of course, there have been many, many other such diseases, Pompe's disease being one of them, where again, a businessman, John Crowley, who had 3 children who inherited these defective genes that could not really produce the alpha-glucosidase enzyme and created this Pompe's disease, were also able to then fund a research program in enzyme replacement therapy. And again, he has 3 thriving children today who have not had to have premature lifespans because of their condition. So I think today enzyme replacement therapies are extremely well used, and this is something that we also, I believe, need to focus on, because despite all these wonderful therapies that are now saving lives and helping young people to lead near normal lives, I think the biggest challenge is the cost of treatment. And I know Meenakshi knows it very well. We often rely on these big pharma to give us compassionate care use of these products, but that's not going to be adequate for a country like ours. And I often say to Meenakshi and to the government that, we need to have a fast-track abbreviated pathway where we actually, develop these fairly easy to develop enzyme replacement therapies as biosimilars, but make sure that we have the government backing these kind of therapies, because unless there's an assured backing and an assured kind of commercial support for these kind of products, I know that companies are very reluctant to invest in these programs. Sad to say that, but it's true. And I think this is where an institute like ours can actually develop this up to a point with a lot of support and then license it to many companies through a government scheme. So this is something which we really need to think about. It's it's fairly straightforward to develop these enzyme replacement therapies. The biggest challenge is that the number of patients and the cost is what needs to be addressed through government subsidies. And that's why I think there's been this bit of, we want to do it, but we can't, kind of attitude from government. So I think this is an area which the government must support and must subsidize. And I would like to suggest a model where CHG actually does the kind of research in partnership with companies, and then basically outsources the production to companies and is the link with the government to really roll this out, is the kind of model I'd like to suggest. But I think since enzyme replacement therapies, so much has happened. And I'm most excited with CRISPR technologies, gene editing technologies. In 2020, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry was jointly awarded to Emmanuel Charpentier and Jennifer Doudna for their groundbreaking work on CRISPR-Cas9, a method for precise genome editing. And this achievement marked a significant milestone in the field of gene therapy, allowing researchers to modify DNA with extraordinary precision. And the advent of CRISPR-Cas9 has revolutionized this field, allowing for precise modifications of the DNA and potentially correcting genetic defects at their source. So I think this is a very exciting time for genetic disorders, and this approach has offered huge promise and permanent cures than how we treat ongoing, how the ongoing treatments are dealing with genetic disorders. And as research progresses, gene editing continues to show immense potential in treating almost any kind of genetic disorder. As of April 2024, 24 gene therapies have received global approval for clinical use. These therapies, once confined to research papers and lab benches, are now saving lives. But that's not all. Over 2,000 gene therapies are in various stages of clinical development, waiting to emerge from the crucible of scientific rigor into the realm of patient care. Now, I think this is where we need to do some introspection. When the whole world is researching genetic disorders, we need to be right up there. We need to increase our research focus on genetic disorders, because we are the country which will have perhaps the largest cohorts and diversity of genetic disorders. That makes very interesting research, but that also is a great substrate for developing new treatments. And I think that's where we need to focus on. We need amplification of CHG in a big, big way. There needs to be a strong focus in all our biological research institutes on genetic disorders. I don't think there is enough. Yes, we do talk about CRISPR-Cas9 editing. We are basically looking at it as diagnostic tools, but I really believe we need to look at it as therapeutic tools. This is where I would like to really request IBAB and CHG to partner in kickstarting this whole research focus on genetic disorders through CRISPR technologies. So, I'd just like to then sort of also focus on a very big challenge that we have today. So whilst this groundbreaking advancements in gene editing technologies have, opened new doors in treating these kind of disorders, I think the biggest challenge we have worldwide is the cost of therapy. Each one of these gene therapies or CRISPR-Cas9 based gene therapies is concerned costs you multi-million dollars. Each one costs you $2 to $3 million per patient. Interestingly, there are two companies, Vertex and Bluebird Therapeutics. Both have got approved gene therapies for beta thalassemia. Okay? But the cost of these therapies is almost $3 million per patient. Now, if you look at where is the prevalence of beta thalassemia, it's in our part of the world. We can't afford $3 million per patient. Of course, it's developed in the US, but their main markets they find are the Middle East, because the Middle East also has a huge prevalence of beta thalassemia, which is often, obviously it is, basically attributed to this inbreeding that happens over generations in many of these kind of closed societies. And that's why most of the market focus is on some of the rich Middle Eastern countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE, but countries like India and Pakistan and Bangladesh, which also have a very high level of beta thalassemia, we can't afford it. That is the divide we need to bridge. How do we bring the costs down? How do we basically develop treatments, processes, and ecosystems that actually foster affordable care? Now, I know that when Siddharth Mukherjee and I started Immunil a few years ago to bring CAR T therapies to India, it was about affordable access. Again, CAR T therapies were $1 million per patient. And yet we know these are life-saving, curative treatments, personalized treatments, which we must bring to our patients in India. And with that in mind, of course, Immunil was created. You also have another company started from IIT, Immunact, which was also created. And I think between us, we have actually brought down the treatment costs significantly. From $1 million, it's now come down to, less than $50,000. And I think we are all trying to kind of get it down to a $10,000 level mark. That is the kind of innovation we need in this country. I think innovation that delivers affordable access to these life-saving medicines is going to be our opportunity and our strength. And that's why even in genetic disorders and in gene therapies, we need to do that. And it's not unimaginable, because what you need to do is to really create the ecosystem that delivers that affordable access. So it starts with research. And as you know, gene therapies, again, mimic CAR T therapies because they're all personalized therapies. Here you need to have a strong capability base in CRISPR technologies, CRISPR-Cas9 technologies. And I think our academic institutes are very capable of doing that. You need viral delivery, or you need other kinds of delivery mechanisms to deliver the gene into the body safely. There's a lot of research to be done in that. And I think we need to get all these academic institutes who are focusing on these areas, whether it's CHG, whether it's IISC, whether it's National Center for Biological Sciences or the National Institute of Immunology or anyone else. I think we need to make sure that we focus on, delivery vectors for delivering these genes safely into the body. And of course, we have, the talent that is required to basically develop all this. We need to create facilities that do all this. And I think the fact that we've already kickstarted CAR-T personalized therapies is the first step. And I think we need to build on that, because gene therapies are no different. If you are agnostic to what you're doing, it's very similar. So why can't we really create this ecosystem, create these capabilities, and put in a strong focus so that we actually don't, or we can free ourselves of the dependence on these kind of therapies from big pharma or from Western companies, who obviously have a very different business model. They are they don't have enough patients, so they do need to basically price their products much higher. Here, I think there's no dearth of, patients who need these products. And therefore, I think we need to focus on our very unique model that actually delivers affordability through this innovation that we're looking at. So I really think that when we look at what we need to do as a country, I think we need to make sure that we focus on our large population base. This is about population genetics, and it's about understanding the diversity, the diversity-based genetic disorders, and this is what I think CHG has been trying to do over the years, and we need to keep focusing on it. And I was just discussing right now that between IBAB and CHG, we ought to actually start creating a very large database of information on these genetic disorders. I think it's important for the ecosystem in Bangalore to collaborate and create this understanding and knowledge base of all the genetic genomics, genetic information that we have at a population scale, to see what it means to us as a country in terms of addressing many of these genetic disorders. I'm sure Meenakshi will tell you that many of these young children don't even know they have a genetic disorder till they absolutely display some very serious symptoms. And then by the time they come to you, it's fairly late stage, it's very, we cannot do very much. But I think having a genetic test right at birth is extremely important for many of these disorders, which can be picked up early, which can be treated early, but we need to have treatments. We cannot rely on compassionate care from the West. We have to, create these capabilities ourselves in terms of whether it is enzyme replacement therapies, whether it is gene therapies, whether it is the need to develop new vectors and what have you. I mean, today I think the world is also looking at, even in the personalized therapy side, allogenic CAR-Ts are something that we're looking at as well, where you don't have to only depend on the person's T cells, but you can actually develop allogenic CAR-Ts from gamma delta cells and things like that. So I think, there is this huge need to basically focus on research and innovation. And I'm really glad that, the government has come up with very important two initiatives. One is, of course, the Vigyan Dhara scheme, which is really focusing on research and innovation in key critical areas. And I think they have actually recognized regenerative medicine and our kind of rare diseases and genetic disorders as one area where they want to focus research efforts on. And this is an area which I think we must make sure that we are part of that particular effort. It is a national effort, and I think those of us who are ahead of the game in terms of research and research findings must be leading from the front. And here I think again, CHG, IBAB and BBC, must take the lead. We have already done much more than what others have done. Of course, IGIB in Delhi also has done a lot. And I know that many other centers have also started focusing on these areas. But there has to be collaboration. There has to be a collective effort in terms of doing all of this. So I think this is very important. The other scheme that, of course, has recently been announced is the BioE3, biomanufacturing policy, which again has focused on some of these new areas, which includes, personalized therapies as one focus area for the BioE3 policy. E3, of course, stands for economy, environment, and employment. And I think scientific employment is going to be the most important indicator of how powerful India can be in the future. We have the largest scientific talent, especially in biosciences. I think we must not lose that focus. I think biosciences is going to be such an important, sought after, skill that all of us who have, focused on science and especially bioscience should actually consider ourselves very fortunate, because that's going to be the need of the future. That is going to be what the world needs in terms of skills and talent and innovative potential. So I think as a country, we have willy-nilly focused on science, but we've also fortunately focused on biological sciences. Today, the time has come to really expand that focus. I think everyone's been focused on IT, but IT as a skill, not necessarily as a research area. Biology, on the other hand, has not focused itself on skills, but more as a research area. So we actually have a benefit and an advantage. Now we need to move from research to skills as well. And expanding from research to skills is much easier than to try and move from skills to research. So I think we are in the driver's seat. We are in the leading position to drive our future. And the future is going to belong to biosciences. Because today, whether you talk of climate change, whether you talk of energy, whether you talk of sustainability, whether you talk of healthcare, whether you talk of any economic need that the world has in terms of food, feed, or fuel, cannot be done without biology. And that's why I believe that all of us in this room ought to actually pledge to ourselves and to the country and to the world that we will focus on research and innovation that will actually save our planet in many, many ways. That's what it's all about. This opportunity is very exciting, very important, and enormous. It is limitless. That is what I really wanted to talk about today, because whilst we have all these new technologies, which is very exciting, I think we need to use these new technologies intelligently. I think as young scientists, as the younger generation who are, engaged and involved with scientific activities, this is your opportunity to really, really make sure that we look at all these areas. And, you need to also look at cutting-edge areas where you can make a difference. We've always been a Me Too country for too long. And I know that when I started Biocon, my single viewpoint was, I need to do things differently. I need to do things which others are not doing. And I need to do things which my country needs and which the world needs. That's the way I looked at it. Initially, I started off developing enzyme technologies. And those enzyme technologies I developed because I was familiar with enzymes. I had studied fermentation science, brewing science. I was familiar with enzymes. And I knew that enzymes were very exciting. They had a very important role to play. And the number of innovative enzyme technologies that we developed just because we were looking at various things that enzymes could do created us as a very unique, differentiated company. And I remember when I sold my enzymes business to the world's largest enzyme company, Novozymes, they said to me that some of your technologies that you had developed were so good that we could not compete with you in many parts of the world. And that was a eureka moment for me to know that we could do high science in our labs, in our company, in the 80s and early 90s. That is what we actually developed. And of course, it was an idea ahead of its time because we had developed a number of enzymes for biofuels. We had developed a number of enzymes for, replacing chemical technologies with enzyme technologies, biotransformation processes for many, many industrial processes. But obviously, those were not the days of environmental sustainability, and people didn't, were very interested but not interested to use it. So that was the challenge we had. So we had to go to parts of the world where they were interested. And that's how we built our business globally. But today, of course, everyone's looking at that technology, saying, my God, enzyme technology is one of the most important technologies, whether it is synthetic biology, whether it is biofuels, whether it is sustainability solutions for dealing with pollution. So I think this is what it tells you, that if you start conceiving and developing an idea ahead of its time will come. Secondly, of course, when we got into biopharmaceuticals, I did it with a sense of purpose. India was at the epicenter of diabetes. We were importing all our insulins from overseas, and 90% of that insulin was animal insulin. Now, to me as a scientist, it just didn't make sense saying, why are we using animal insulin when we know it's immunogenic? Recombinant human insulin is available, why aren't we using it? And the answer was, it's too expensive. So only the affluent patients in India could afford recombinant human insulin. And I said, we've got to do something about this. And what we did was, we didn't do a cut and paste of technology. We actually developed our own proprietary technology, which was based on enzyme technology. And today, we are the world's only company producing insulin using Pichia yeast as its platform. And we are the third largest producer of insulins in the world. And we have brought down the price of insulins to an affordable level for the whole world, not just India. When you can do it for India, you do it for the world. The same was the case of, biologic drugs. I remember when my best friend died of breast cancer, and she had to sell her property to afford a basic breast cancer drug, Herceptin. And I said to myself, why is this happening? Why should people not be able to afford life-saving drugs in a country like India? We've got to do something. Pegfilgrastim for interchangeable insulin glargine. That is the reputation we have of being able to do good science in our country, in our labs, and take it to world markets. So I think everything is possible. It's not that I had to go and do research overseas. Today I'm very happy that some of the most amazing novel innovation that we have done, I've had to license it to US companies and develop it in the US, because unfortunately we don't have the right ecosystem that understands what novel therapies are all about, or what novel treatments are all about. And so it takes, we don't have the global credibility that it takes to develop these kind of products in India. So I think we again need to build that credibility, and it is happening. Because the fact that when I love to see it in all these US publications, Biocon developed this medicine is now, filed for an IPO. So I just feel very proud that when we, spun off this company, and nobody believed in that asset because it came from India, it came from a small biotech company in India. Today, that asset is leading in the market, and it's in phase 3 clinical trials, and they're, they've just filed for an IPO. And the data that they've generated is so exciting, so important in head and neck cancer, that everyone's got their eyes fixated on that. And every time they say this is a Biocon, promoted molecule, I feel very good, because it was all done in our labs in Bangalore. So it can be done. I think research is the focus. I think you have to innovate. Even when you imitate, do it in an innovative way. Like what we did. Insulin was not a new molecule. But the technology to develop insulin was something which we developed as a proprietary technology. So doing things differently and doing different things are both innovation. So I think that's what we need to really focus on. I think that's the kind of effort that I'm seeking from all the young researchers, the scientists. And of course, our academic institutes must also foster that spirit of innovation and research that will actually allow us to really lead in the future. Very often we say that India is going to provide a large part of the global talent needs in the future because of our demographics. Whilst a lot of the world is aging, we are still very young as a country. And whilst a lot of the world has aging scientists, we have young scientists. These are the young scientists. You are the young scientists who are going to power the world tomorrow. And that's why I want all of you to understand that science is the most exciting field that you can belong to in this day and age. Having that spirit of inquiry, the spirit of curiosity, asking the right questions in research, and using that research to translate it into innovation and innovative solutions is our opportunity. And we cannot lose that opportunity. And I think we are very fortunate that we are in India's science city. Okay? I think Bengaluru is undisputedly India's science capital. We have the most amazing ecosystem. Every time I go to meet with a bunch of scientists, whether in IISc, whether in NCBS, whether in IBAB, whether in CHG or my own labs in the company, it is so exciting to hear about all the new stuff that they're talking about. Recently they started with the longevity program at IISc. And that is talking about creating a map of aging at a tissue level, at an organ level. Because they say today, longevity is measured in a very, general way. You look at longevity and aging as a process which is measured only by surrogate markers, which is your cognitive skills, your mobility skills, or your other aging symptoms like, your hair, going gray, or you get wrinkles. So these are all symptoms of aging. But what we are not doing is doing a deep dive into saying, what is it that's triggering aging? And can we deal with that? Can we stop aging? Can we slow down aging? By picking it up right at the point where that trigger has been flipped. And I think that's a very interesting approach to researching and studying aging. So these are very exciting things that are happening in our country, in our city, in our labs. And I want all of you to really think about what you can do to involve yourself, engage yourself, and contribute to science in our country. So I think I've said enough, and I would just like to say that with all the things that the government is doing, all the things that a number of academic institutes are also doing, and with all the opportunities that industry is creating and policies are creating, I think it is your time, it is your future, and you must invest in it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that insightful lecture. I'm sure most of us must be feeling really excited to grab the opportunities and do things differently. Thanks again, ma'am. So Dr. Kiran has kindly agreed to take up a few questions. So if any of you has any questions, you may please ask now.
There's one aspect. There's gene editing, a lot of things. For instance, the case of hemoglobinopathies have actually available now. Wouldn't be useful research for us to make it affordable to this country. For instance, large tracts of this country have hemoglobin S problem, and of course thalassemia is also there. But making it affordable, it's at the moment not, we cannot. How can we get it to our people on this point?
Exactly what I'm saying, that we need to make sure that we identify some of these areas, and we have it in us to do the research, we have it in us to develop treatments that are affordable. We cannot afford what is being done in other parts of the world. So it is up to us. I mean, I've demonstrated how you could do it in many areas. And I've shown you that even in a very expensive treatment area like CAR-Ts, we are able to show you that you can develop it affordably. So I think if that is the area you want to focus on, we should take a lead in that.
Certainly.
I think one thing you will agree that prevention of children being conceived or born with rare genetic diseases will save a lot of the efforts in terms of the cost that gets built up once a child is born. So I feel that government is not necessarily doing enough through ASHA workers or whoever else. The health department should be reaching out to communities where there's a lot of inbreeding so that such children, particularly for poor families, are prevented from being born. So is that something like, I know you have good access to the government and to the health department. I was just wondering if you made any efforts to advise the government to see how in village areas, like something like this not happening in my village area. I don't see ASHA workers coming and talking to families about prevention of inbreeding and all of that. Of course, in a very respectful counseling manner. I'm just wondering if you had any comments on that.
Ethical question which is very difficult to address the way you are suggesting. I think you just need to have a lot of awareness building in villages about these potential genetic diseases, about inbreeding. Obviously the government is doing a lot, saying that inbreeding is not advisable. So I think getting societies and communities to understand the importance of marrying outside your communities is something that the government will have to do, but it is generational. I don't think it will happen immediately. But I think it's not, we cannot step in and say that you should not conceive or you shouldn't have babies. I mean, basically, it's an ethical question. It's a moral question. So it's something very difficult to do the way you are suggesting. But I think the only way to do it is to build in bring in an awareness amongst families. Instead, they should not allow them to marry, have intra-caste marriages should be deterred. So that's the way you have to do it. You have to dissuade them from having this inbreeding, marital kind of tendencies.
Can I say something about that? So I think in the short term, prenatal diagnosis, that means testing another pregnancy once the first child has a serious disorder, a disorder without a treatment, and probably affecting the intellect, is something that is being done, but in small numbers because there aren't enough trained people, not in the government sector anyway. And that's something that we have tried to address in Indira Gandhi Institute. Although it's not a birthing facility, we get a lot of poor people that come from all over the state for genetic disorders, and we get that prenatal diagnosis. So a fetal medicine center has now been set up. So it'll be low cost. But more importantly, people have qualms about stopping a pregnancy. So there is a new technology called pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. If a couple has IVF and you can test on day 3 of the embryo for the particular genetic disorder, then you can put back embryos that are unaffected. So no taking of life, no conflict with these things. So this is happening now in Bangalore. Yeah.
Today, I think you have to understand that there's a very thin dividing line between, ethics and science, in terms of what you're trying to do. So your intention is good. So ethics and intent is very, very important for you to understand. So I think, like Neenakshi said, you can't tell people once they are married, please don't have kids. That's very difficult. But I think it's much more, important to try and advise those families that these two should not get married because the risk of having genetically acquired disease is very high. So doing a risk profiling is very important. Rather than horoscopes, I think risk profiling of genetic diseases is going to be very important. And maybe that's the scientific, approach we can take to preventing genetic disorders. Yeah. Yeah.
Hello. Ma'am, thank you for a very, it was a great speech, very optimistic. I just had this question, as a leader of this huge company, how are you looking at solving the heterogeneity which is present within the population? Are you willing to understand that for therapies like CAR T cells or monoclonal antibody therapies, which are very specific to maybe some individual levels as well? So, and to provide those therapies, how are you planning to make those therapies affordable, to keeping in mind there are these lot of economic stratas which are really underprivileged, delivering it to them?
Mentioned to you that CAR T therapies are personalized therapies, right? And personalized therapies are very expensive therapies because, it involves the patient being kept in the hospital for a long time. It involves, a very, very expensive process of developing CAR Ts. And if you were to do I don't think we can afford that. So as I said, we've already reduced that price through our own means to $50,000 today. But I think the aim is to bring it below 10,000, and it can be done. Ultimately, it's going to be allogenic T cells which will make it really cheap. Today, anything that's personalized therapy will be expensive. But if you have it off the shelf, obviously you can make it much cheaper. That's the research you need. That's the way we look at diseases and the challenges. I think we have the most exciting challenge in a country like India. How to deliver affordable therapies to people and patients wherever they are. They should not just be rich patients. They should be even poor patients who should be able to afford a therapy if it's going to save their lives. And there, of course, governments also have to have an important role to play. But you can't tell a government, please subsidize $1 million therapy. They can't. They can't afford it. It'll completely crush the system. But if you can tell them to afford a $10,000 therapy and say, can you at least, and then marrying it with insurance and saying, okay, can you at least support $5,000 of the 10,000, they will. And you know that there are not that many patients, so you're not talking about 10 million patients, you're probably talking about maybe 10,000 patients, which then the government can afford. So I think you have to look at healthcare in a very different way. You have to look at what is it that's life-saving, what is it that's what that needs to be done, what is the targeted price point that you need to at least make it accessible. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah. I would like you to take back to you when you were struggling and when you must have faced a lot of problems addressing really big challenges. What are the things that somebody who is starting out at that level needs to do or needs to think or needs to happen for you to break out of the constraints that are there when you are starting out or at a very early stage? I know, I have read your stories, I know what it is. But you can explain that part is very, very important because it's easy to start something, but how do you continue?
Yeah, I think you have to have a very strong sense of purpose. And if you're very, driven by that sense of purpose, I don't think some roadblocks or some disappointments or failures will really stop you. If you're just doing it to make money, a lot of young startups today, they're only interested in seeing when their next investment is going to come and at what stage and when can I exit. If that's your intent of starting a company, you don't care. If you fail, then you just give it up because it's not your money. Here, when I started, everything was mine, right? I hardly had any help. In those days, there was no venture funding. You had to take a bank debt. It was very difficult. And so I think the sense of ownership and responsibility and survival was much greater when I was starting the company than it is today. Today, I think people move from one to another because they feel that, okay, if this didn't work, I'll do something else. But those days, I had to make something work. And so that sense of purpose, and why did I want it to work? Because I believed in it. When I started developing enzyme technologies, I believed so much in that enzyme technology, saying, no, we have to make this work. And so we would do everything. I mean, the whole team used to say, yes, it has to work. And I know that a lot of my colleagues who have formed companies after leaving Biocon feel the same way. They don't give up. They want to, keep pursuing. They want to keep trying. They want to make sure that what they believe in must deliver. That is the sense of purpose that young people need to have. That's why I also believe in research, it's the same thing. You can't just do research in a half-hearted way, right? You got to be passionate about your research. I want every one of the students in this room to know that research is not something that you do in your spare time. Research is something you do because you're passionate about it, you're interested in it, you want those answers. That's when you're a true scientist. If you're just going to do research saying because my guide is telling me to do this, that's not research. You have to have that personal passion, interest, and curiosity in getting certain questions answered. That is research.
May I just make a comment? The first time I had the honor of meeting Kiran was in 1983 when she was growing papaya trees in what used to be Biocon. So from that to CAR T cells and mRNA therapy and all that, I think that's a fantastic journey. Really, you're a hero for all of us. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Anuranjan, you wanted to ask?
I have a question here. Excuse me.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much for the wonderful talk. There can be a better inspirational talk than this. So my question here is, as we are very far from therapy for the genetic disorders, and we already have some idea of NGS and the technologies in place for diagnostic. Why can't the government make the diagnostic affordable for the for the people who are expecting. When during the pregnancy itself, there are NGS technologies which are there to diagnose the genetic disorders so why can't the government or us can take steps to make it affordable?
See, I don't think you can keep asking the government to do everything. The government can enable, the government can facilitate, the government can certainly subsidize. But at the end of the day, we need to have technologies that are effective, affordable, and smart. That's where science counts. I mean, that's our challenge, right? I mean, in industry, we are the ones who have basically developed very, very affordable, smart technologies, because when you are addressing a challenge where people need to, get it at a certain price point, it drives you to do that innovation. I mean, I want to tangentially talk about the exhibition that is ongoing, which I want every one of you to go and attend at Science Gallery, Bengaluru, which actually traces and chronicles the journey of science in Bengaluru. Why did we become the science capital? And it's a very interesting set of exhibits that they have there. And one exhibit, in fact, two exhibits I'll talk about. One is the Simputer. I don't know how many of you have heard of the Simputer. But the Simputer was the world's first handheld device, by the way. Before iPad, before Palm Pilot, it was the Simputer. And this was invented by 4 scientists in IISc. Okay? And what was Simputer? Simple, inexpensive, multilingual people's computer. It was priced at 9,999 rupees, I remember, in the year 2001. Okay? This was a powerful computer which was developed by the scientists in IISc. Okay? They developed a prototype. They got BEL to develop 1,000 pieces based on that prototype. And their expectation was that the government of India should use it because it was multilingual. By the way, it was also touchscreen because they wanted to make a touchscreen for people to play games on. So they had thought of everything. And they wanted the government of India to use it in the defense, in their other areas to see whether they could, whether this could scale up. Because you need a market, you need large numbers of pieces to make it successful. But nobody used it. Then it was sold to some private company. The private company made 40,000 units. And then came iPad and Palm Pilot, and this product just died. Okay? So we should actually invest in these new technologies and new ideas and new innovations. If we don't buy it, and if we're constantly looking outside for these ideas, obviously we are not going to create those opportunities for ourselves. In fact, I remember the New York Times had an article on the Simputers that said, this is an amazing bit of computer which you can think Mahatma Gandhi has invented, but Steve Jobs needs to advertise it. That's what they said, which I thought was so true. Somebody else telling us that our innovation is great, we accept it. But we ourselves don't think it's great. You understand? That is the culture we need to inculcate in ourselves. That pride, that belief in our innovation, that belief in our research, the belief in our research capabilities. That's what we need in the country. So that Vigyan Dhara has to inculcate that culture. So that was one example, so which just died a natural death. But let me give you another very exciting thing that happened in Bangalore. The electronic voting machine was actually developed in BEL, okay? And what was it developed for? It was actually developed for the union elections. Okay, so BEL had a large union and they used to have these union elections every year. And I remember Captain Prabhala used to be at BEL. He got a good idea. He said, "Arey, we have all these electronics and we know all these things. Why don't we develop a voting machine?" so that we do the union voting on these machines. It will be very interesting. And this he did it way back in the year 2002, 2003. Long time ago he did it. And that started working very well. But the good news is, the government thought it was a great idea and we now have it as our electronic voting machine. Look how we scaled up. And today we are the only country in the world that actually has this population scale, population of billion plus people using voting machines. And the beauty is, this voting machine has been already conceptualized to look at all that can go wrong. How can you cheat? How do we prevent cheating? How can you not do this? So they thought about it then, and now it has scaled up. So in fact, at the Science Gallery, Bengaluru, Captain Prabhala is actually giving a talk to students saying, you want to know about how we designed it? This is the way we designed it. So I think some things work, some things don't work. But when we adopt it at population scale, see how successful it can be. Yeah. No, it's okay.
I was just curious. I mean, thanks for a wonderful lecture. I was curious about, gene editing and its medical utilities are obviously going to grow. You gave some examples and also numbers, which were nearly, I think, 3 orders of magnitude more than what has happened and then what is in the pipeline. With respect to global policies and policies in this country, are some of the recent developments enablers for the people who may embark on initiating such ventures beyond research, obviously?
No, I think the government is very focused on enabling science, okay? It's for us to tell them what we want. It's for us to tell them we want this policy. They're willing to do that. If we don't engage with the policy makers, and I'm glad to say that today the policy makers want to reach out to us, want to engage with us, want us to tell them what do we want. I mean, let me tell you, this whole Bio E3 policy wasn't just developed by the Department of Biotechnology. The Association of Biotech-led Enterprises has been talking about this biomanufacturing policy for the last 5 years. We've been telling them, do this, do this. It's a very important area for India. And finally, I'm delighted that whatever we have told them, they've actually come up with many of those in their policy. Now we have to see the fine print and make sure that they have actually, translated a lot of our suggestions into real policy. So I think government is ready to do that. If you tell them, look, this CRISPR, and by the way, government is very excited with new cutting edge technologies. So if you tell them, look, this is the power and potential of CRISPR-Cas9 technology, and we would like X, Y, and Z to really sort of fast track and accelerate this whole investment and excitement that it can generate, I think they'll do it. So what are the roadblocks? What is it that's stopping you? That's what you need to really discuss with the policymakers, and they'll be very happy to come out with good policies.
Thank you, ma'am, for such an encouraging and enlightening talk. So, as you've already spoken a lot about encouraging and the spirit of innovative science in youngsters especially, what do you think is missing in the current context in India? What are the gaps at the grassroots level in schools or in very young children that they're denied of thinking out of the box and in an innovative way?
I think we focus too much on set curriculums, okay? I think you need to have project-based learning. You need to feel excited. You need to, in this day and age of internet, where you can access the World Wide Web and learn new things, I think your young minds should actually reach out to new sources of knowledge. It shouldn't be just classroom learning. I feel the big mistake we make is our society believes that passing exams is the most important thing. I don't think it's the most important. It's just one metrics of knowing how much you have learned. But the real metrics of knowing how much you are learning is to really open your mind, see what's happening. It may have nothing to do with your curriculum, but it's something that you've been interested in, something that has caught your attention, and you actually want to know more and more about that. That's the kind of learning culture you need to inculcate.
Ma'am, also, why do you think that life sciences has always been stereotyped as a less scoring or a less income field?
Which is totally wrong, by the way. Do you know that life sciences is much more paying than IT? I hope people know that. Today, if you are in the life science business, in the life science field, whether you're in a hospital as a doctor or a technician, whether you're in a lab, in a life science company or a pharma company, or whether you're a researcher, believe me, you'll be paid more than an IT professional. So I think it's a myth that life science is not being paid. It's just that IT has occupied the imagination of everyone because it's such a huge area, right? It employs a large number of people. So when they're looking for jobs, everyone thinks the easiest job for me to get is IT, not life sciences. That's why people make a rush for IT. But if you want a better job, go for life sciences.
Thank you.
Hi, ma'am.
I think...
Hi, ma'am. Thank you for an amazing speech. But my question is, so there are many technologies, NGS, CRISPR-based technologies, ERTs, and everything. But in a room full of these people, we understand these technologies and these advantages. But when someone like me who wants to deliver these technologies at the grassroots level or to the end users, but people don't seem to understand this at the grassroots level. How do I make sure or deliver the message?
So that is the reason we started Science Gallery Bengaluru. It was to connect science and society. That's a very important question you asked, because we all know it. But how do we get that message across to the common man as to how exciting and how important these technologies are? Unless you get a scientific temper in society, I don't think people will be even interested, right? In the same way, okay, you got about CRISPR, Cas9, NGS, all this that you mentioned right now. The common man may not understand it, but the common man does understand that there's something very fantastic when you show them an instrument and say that, look, this instrument can do X, Y, and Z. They get quite, impressed by that. Similarly, a common man may not know how this computer works or how the phone works. But you can tell that, but the common man knows that something has gone into this phone, something has gone into this computer, which is calculating things, which is making things do, showing me images, allowing me to do so many things. Must be amazing. It's like magic. That's how they think, right? So I think the common man may not know everything, but there has to be a sense of wow. And we have to create that sense of wow in bioscience. By saying, do you know that I can tell you what's wrong with you by just doing this test? People know. They come and do tests, right? They do a blood test, they will do a biochemistry test. Do they even care? They'll just say, okay, doctor, what is wrong with me? And the doctor tells them. So we never explain to them what we are doing with their blood or their samples, right? So explaining things to people is very important, and for them to get that wow factor saying, wow, I would have never imagined this. It's up to us to tell them.
Excuse me, ma'am. Thank you for the wonderful talk, ma'am.
Dr. Kiran mentioned the importance of passion, and I just want to illustrate that by a small instance I remember. She had just started what's now the big company Biocon, and she used to drive once in a while into IISc campus, and she was making papain. I knew that she was doing that. And I think very few scientists, biologists at least, that I knew, believed that she would succeed. And she used to drive a Maruti van, and she drove it herself. And I don't know what is the purpose of those visits to IISc, but that reflects the kind of passion she had and belief she had in herself and in the idea. I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. I used to visit IISc to know the structure of Papin.
Thank you, everyone. There have been a lot of questions, but I think we should stop it now. Dr. Kiran, we really appreciate the time, experience, and expertise that you have shared with us. I would like to invite Dr. Meenakshi to hand over a token of appreciation from our side.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am. I would like to thank all of you who have come here, and also would like to request everyone to gather in the quadrangle for a group photo in the ground floor. Thank you so much.